welcome back to another wonderful week of our anatomical art study. And what better way to start off this journey than with the backbone of the body, the torso. I'm Joshua Haddad and this is A.T.I. Draws. Thank you guys for joining me for another wonderful video. I hope you guys are having an amazing time learning anatomy. The best way to learn anatomy and to even get started with anatomy is to break it up. But first we need to get used to actually drawing a pose anatomically. To start this off, I decided to draw 4 anatomy poses daily. 2 for a girl and 2 for a guy. I will later include this as my daily warm-up. For obvious reasons. Not all of us are that good at anatomy. Anyway, but enough of that, let us focus on drawing torsos. Well, to start off these torso drawing methods for your anatomy. The first method is the mannequin method. A very common method you will see all over the internet, a lot of people will use, and it is basically where you draw an egg-shaped or an elliptical-shaped ribcage and a block-like pelvis. And then you would just connect them with a S-shaped spine, or just a line spine, whatever one works. This is a very common method that is great for understanding structure and proportion. It also helps with understanding how the character rotates, tilts, and allows you to draw good dynamic poses, and is very effective for drawing any body type, hence the reason why it is so popular. Now the issue is unlike most other anatomy drawing methods, this one sometimes if you rely on it too literally, it can make your artworks feel pretty stiff, make your character feel pretty stiff. And this is a problem for those who rely on their art too much, so I recommend kind of just taking it lightly and trying to relax when it comes to drawing this and just working around this instead of making this your main anatomy sculpt. Another con is it takes quite a bit of practice to understand it in perspective, solely due to the fact that you're drawing very simplified shapes inside a perspective form, so unless you're able to draw it in a more 3D-like way, it is very hard for you to understand on how it's shaped in a perspective-like manner. Now, for the most expressive method of them all, in terms of creating the most dynamic and lively poses, is the gesture first method. This method allows you to create the best characters when it comes to expressive drawings and animations, so anyone listening who wants to have these expressive artworks, this is a method for you. You start with a flowing line of action. This is an S-shaped arc flowing around the spine and how it moves, usually from the nape of the neck down to the lower parts of the spine, or can be used from the upper mid back down to the lower parts of the pelvis. This really helps produce dynamic and lively poses that prevents stiffness in your character, which is a big factor, a big issue that many artists struggle earlier on and even later on in their anatomy drawing career. Henceforth, why it's so important and so heavily used in animation and expressive artworks, because it gets rid of the stiffness, which it obviously takes a lot of time to fix. Now, the cons to this is it's easy for you to lose accurate proportions if you're not careful. If you decide to rush through your art without effectively understanding how the anatomy of a character is put together, you will lose pretty balanced proportions and your character will fall apart. So, best advice I can give you on this is to take your time. The second issue is that it requires genuine anatomical knowledge for you to refine this. Because now you're just using a line, you don't have a genuine shape. You have to craft your shape together. And because artwork like this or a method like this requires you to refine the artwork again and again in order for you to get a very detailed artwork, then you will have to have quite a bit of an anatomical knowledge earlier on during the sketch phase in order for you to effectively bypass this and to be able to properly refine your characters. So if you're willing to produce a very good expressive artwork or animation and you wish to have good anatomical knowledge, then this method is for you. Next is the box and cylinder method, another very popular method that you will see in a lot of artworks or a lot of YouTubers, people on Pinterest or wherever you get your art from. It is a very popular method. It is basically where you use a box for the ribcage and a cylinder, wedge, or underwear-like shape for the pelvis. This is the most practical method for learning or drawing perspective, henceforth why it is so popular. Next, it is also very good for understanding how you rotate the torso in a 3D space and understanding how the body is in a 3D setting. It also is very good for carrying those who are not as good at lighting and shading, or allowing those who are a very clear way for you to highlight and shade your character in a very easy and one-way method. Well, not one way, but very go-to method. Now, the issues with this is from a artist who has used this a couple of times, especially in the recent videos, is it can feel or look robotic if you don't soften this method out. So if you're in the sketch phase and you're trying to draw this method and it ends up looking very squared, you will need to soften out the edges, adjust this so it will look more alive, unless your character is supposed to look robotic. Now, to tie into this is it requires extra steps to flesh this out. You're using this as just a guideline. So because you're using this as a guideline in a 3D space, you're mainly drawing this in a perspective way, which means most of your arts and your stuff has to be continuously redrawn over and over and over again, or consistently adjusted in order for it to actually look correct in this space. But if you're willing to work through that and you really love perspective or wish to learn it, this is a very good method for you. Now is the most anatomy heavy art style method you can have. This is what we would like to refer to as the muscle first. This is where you take major muscle groups and you sketch them first instead of drawing small simplified boxes in order to create these methods. These major muscle groups that you will commonly see people draw first is the abs, obliques, lats, traps, and the pecs. This creates a perfect torso, so you're able to combine the hips, the pelvis, the shoulders, the head, everything already on the torso, so it's more accurate. Now, this is very targeted towards those who like realism or very accurate proportions with their anatomy like figures. So those who don't draw realism like me, this probably won't be the best for you. It also helps you understand how muscles overlap and stretch with each other, and it is very great for athletic or heroic characters that you wish to sculpt. Now, this can be and will be overwhelming for beginners. Unless you are gifted in anatomy, this will be overwhelming for you at the very beginning, because this requires a lot of anatomy understanding or anatomical understanding in order for you to draw this. And it is also very easy for you to over detail this if your goal isn't to simplify this and adjust later, and then most beginners end up losing the big picture. So if your goal is to draw realism, have good accurate anatomy based sketches, or understand how the muscles overlap with each other, then this method may be a bit challenging for you. Next is the most easiest method and the most beginner friendly method that you see a lot of artists use when drawing very simplified tutorials. It is called the bean method. It is basically where you draw a torso like a squishy bean that bends, twists, and compresses. This is really fantastic when on understanding how the torso moves and capturing torso movement inside your artwork. It is the most easiest for artists to draw that are just starting out, just because its very simplified bean-like shape makes it very easy for people to draw. If you look at someone draw it, it is not that complex for other artists to learn. It also really helps you understand weight and balance between your character and how certain poses, certain actions, or certain just environments would create more weight and depth in how your character is portrayed. Now, this again, because it is now more beginner friendly, it is not ideal for those who wish to create more detailed anatomy, and it really oversimplifies complex poses if you aren't able to effectively draw poses, your character gestures, and things very well. So, to those who are just starting out art, to those who are struggling, or those who want improvement on how their artwork is looking, I would recommend this, as it is very easy for you to draw this method. But if you're more advanced or you're intermediate, it is probably best if you move forward from this method. Another strangely popular method that seems to be growing a lot more recently is the silhouette first method. Have you ever looked online and you see somebody draw in these blocky gray silhouettes, and then it turns out to end up finalizing as a beautiful artwork? This is the silhouette first method. It is a very interesting method, but it works very well for character design and readability. It also helps you understand and focus on overall shape rather than just an individual part, and it is very useful for stylized or cartoony like work. The issue with this is when you have the silhouette, if you do not have an understanding of overall shape of the character, which we all won't when we first start out, but I'm talking about like overall, it is harder for you to correct the proportions after the silhouette is set, solely due to the fact that you're kind of really following after the silhouette to sculpt your character. So after the silhouette is set, then your proportions is really reliant on the silhouette. Though you can stray away from the silhouette here and there, the main proportions are following the silhouette, and it doesn't teach you internal anatomy by itself. So you will have to learn how the anatomy works internally in order for you to draw pretty accurate proportions. But it is a very effective method, and since it's growing pretty rapidly, it will be very easy for you to find people to learn and grow when using this method. Now, this is best way to put it, you're not going to see much anybody use this method. It is called the contour first method. It is drawing that outline. Now, this is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. You draw the outer line of the torso and then add more structure inside. This is very fast, and for those who want to get a good artwork in, it is mainly used for references, as you're capturing the likeness of a reference and you're able to now translate it and break it down better. But I don't really see much people use it for their actual artworks. You may see animators use it for like quick tutorials, but unless you're very talented and already sculpting your character, many people won't really use this method. And by the time you even get that talented to use this method, other methods will already be better at putting you back on the right track. So you'll be less likely to see someone use this method. Another issue with this method is it's very easy to distort your proportions if you do not have a great understanding, and it does not build strong 3D understanding at all. So you really have to understand perspective, 3D, and anatomy in order for this method to even be viable for you to use. But if once you use this method, it is really good for some nice stylized art in a very fast time manner. So for those who want to use it, by all means, is there. Now, the last and final method that many people tend to use for sculpting their torsos is the planes method. It is basically where you use the luminous or bridgeman style of art to break the torso down into flat planes to understand how light reflects off of them, how the shadows are formed, and the overall form and shape of the actual artwork and anatomy of the character itself. Now this is very good and the best method when it comes to shading and rendering your actual artwork, and it really helps you see your torso as a solid object. So those who are drawing semi-realistic or comic book styles, or even very detailed anime or realistic styles, this is very good for you if you really wish to learn shading, rendering, and seeing the torso in more 3D-like manner. The issue is it takes quite a bit of time. It has a strong learning curve at the beginning, a very strong learning curve. While it is very good, it's just you need to take quite a bit of time to learn the planes, and it also will look very angular if you don't know how to soften it out by drawing your character around how you create these planes, rather than making the planes the actual structure in itself. So this method is very useful, but it can be quite challenging if you are relatively new or you aren't willing to put the time in for this method. Well, without further ado, that's all the 8 main methods that I'm currently aware of, that I know that people draw torsos in their anatomy-like style. I will be going through some of these methods, as I do find myself getting pretty decent at anatomy, specifically in certain areas rather than others. So by trying some of these, I would like to see which one would fit me better, and I hope that you guys do the same. But all these 8 methods, they do have their pros and cons. Now, regardless of which one you choose, all of them will be great no matter what. They're all methods for a reason. So I do really hope that one of these 8 methods are able to resonate with you. And I do thank you guys for stopping by another wonderful video. I do try my best to make it informative and entertaining, as well as relatively quick. I know my videos do drag out in time sometimes, and my apologies, but sometimes it's a bit hard to gauge time and things when you got quite a bit of information that people need. So I do thank you guys for stopping by another wonderful video. Thank you for taking time to watch it, and I hope one of these methods is able to really resonate with you. And I'll see you guys next week.